Welcome, everyone, to Caster Calls to ZombieGrub episode 64. I am here with yet another person known at the current time, anyways, for their Valorant career, but certainly there's a lengthy one behind that. It is Vansilli. Thank you so much for coming on. Hope your day has been great. Really looking forward to talking to you.
I'm looking forward for this conversation. Actually, thank you so much for the invitation, Zombie Grub. I had a long day just doing like PCR tests, haircuts, getting ready for a trip that I'm going to tomorrow. So I guess this is gonna be super fun.
hmm
Hopefully you have enough time. Like as you said, I've been around the scene for quite a number of years. So just like Scott, if there's anything, just like Sir Scoots, I might talk too much, and then you tell me when to stop.
I don't know. I've yet to actually have to do that. But I was gonna say, I managed to fit like Sir Scoots and DJ's Wheat's careers into a single episode somewhat. So I imagine it'll be possible. But yeah, let us begin.
Awesome.
How did you get involved in esports? When did you get involved in esports?
Okay. I think that I got involved probably around the same time as DJ Wheat when it comes to esports. So before it was actually even called esports. So first off, how did I discover all this in this world? Was I'm 38 now. I've been playing video games all my life. Started with an Atari that my brother used to own. Went through the console games and whatnot, and then my dad brought home a 386 computer, right? So it's like just a little bit better than a Commodore or whatnot. And then I discovered like AOL and Netscape for the internet. So we're logging in 14.4 kbps, and I'm discovering video games online, mainly through what was called Quake 2, and then the game in itself was called Quake 2 Capture the Flag. Love that.
Mhm.
I'm a huge scary cat, right? So when it comes to like playing video games and playing Quake, it kind of got scary, especially I'm like 13 at that point. And what was cool is that I'm able to play multiplayer games within Quake 2, and it was just I know that I was playing other users, so there's no jump scares, there's nothing that's going on, and then suddenly I see that I can hit tab and there's a scoreboard, and you could actually be like the best player in the server. So it's like, oh man, this is so awesome. And then after that, I discovered clans, right? So I joined a team, played Quake 2 Capture the Flag as a team. Eventually, Quake 3 came out. And then I was playing Quake 3 Capture the Flag, but mainly Rocket Arena and Clan Arena style. And then this mod called Urban Terror. And Urban Terror, for those that are unfamiliar with that mod, it was basically Counter Strike, but you were able to have a bit of stamina and strafing and jump walls later on through the betas. But also you had like some sort of like a bandage system, so you could actually get opt in the leg, but you'll start limping and you won't be able to run normally until you actually bandage yourself. But you lose stamina, so you can't run as much anymore, and et cetera, et cetera. So it was actually really really fun. And one of my clanmates, so we were co-leaders of a team called the Black Ops Squadron, and his name was Whispers, and he was a caster for this organization called the Team Sportscast Network, TSN. Also used to be known as Tribes Showcast Network because they were only doing Tribes before, so Tribes Radio Network or something like that. And then he's like, "Hey, man, like listen to this guy cast." There's this other dude that was doing Return to Castle Wolfenstein for an online ladder called the OGL. I think it was Online Gaming League or something like that. So you're just scaling against other teams. Like you could challenge a team that was maybe like 4 or 5 ranks higher than you, maybe 10 ranks if you're on a streak, and then you're just trying to be the best in that leader on the leaderboard. Sorry, as a team for that game. So I was listening to, I think it was like Doctors versus Abuse or something like that. So that was like the Wombats and the Wise Guys of back then. And I was like, wow, man, this is actually awesome. Well, I was listening to this through Winamp, through I'm pretty sure if you've listened and spoke to DG Wheat, he talked about it in full detail. But listen to like AM radio broadcasting of Return to Castle Wolfenstein, where you could kind of like just close your eyes and picture what's going on because you were a fan of the game or a member of the community and you understood how the game was played and what the maps looked like, and you could just kind of like really picture everything from like the timers, who's killing who, where the action's happening from, who's playing what class, etc. And I was like, yo, I want to. He's like, yeah, man, we're doing this. We're expanding into different games. Why don't you try it out here for Urban Terror? I was like, hell yeah, dude, I'll try that. Sent in like a demo over to TSN, and back then the guy that was screening the demos, his name was Byte. And I was like, yo, Byte, please listen to my demo. Let me know what you think. And then he told me, unfortunately, it's kind of shit. So so I didn't get into TSN. It actually took me maybe about like, but I didn't let it I didn't let it get to me. I was very, very persistent. It was something that looked very, very cool to do, and that I wanted to build for our community as well within Urban Terror. So I was like, you know what, I'll keep practicing and whatnot. And after like 9 months and 20 demos, I was finally accepted within TSN. And that was not because I was finally good enough, but it's just because I had potential. So it's just like, okay, well, we need casters in Urban Terror. Let's just get Vansilli in, and see how it goes from there, and then let him build through time. And then after joining TSN, sorry, while I was at TSN, in 2003 was when I went to my first LAN, which was CPL summer 2003. And I was like, holy crap, now I'm meeting like international players from around the world competing for an amazing prize pool in Counter-Strike 1.5. CPL Mill just came out, and this was like my first time casting CS on LAN, and it was my first time seeing CPL Mill. So that in itself, I was like, oh crap, man, I got to learn a new map on the fly. Team 3D versus I think it was against Four Kings. Bullseye Morgan got like a 3K on a deagle, and then went on to win the game, etc., etc. And then like I showed up on like ABC World News. I was like, Bob, I'm on TV in 2003. Like, this is awesome, And then TSN sent me to my first international event, which was World Cyber Games in 2003. So this was the first time I was traveling by myself, 18 years old, just like 17, 18, just going to my first event across the pond. And I got to go with DJ Wheat. And I think the person that was casting Warcraft 3 / StarCraft in English was Wax Steven. So it was DJ Wheat, Wax Steven, myself, just hanging out there for the whole week. I got to meet Guillaume Patry, that was like, very known Brood War player from Quebec. He showed me around for a bit. I was like, yeah, I'm from Canada as well. So like we bonded that in that sense. And then he's like getting stopped in the streets for like pictures and like signing autographs. It's like, what is going on here? And it was like, yeah, man, like, Korea is kind of like the mecca of esports right now. It's like, we're like superstars and whatnot. Well, he didn't say that, of course, but it definitely looked like it was that case, like I'm seeing them on like doing like signing deals and like hanging out with like K-pop stars from back then too. I was like, holy crap, man, there's something in here. And I wanted to try to bring that culture from South Korea over here in North America through broadcasting video games, where back then we were calling that like professional gaming or competitive gaming before it was actually just esports. And I think that was kind of like coined in once Twitch started coming out, and you saw that growth in various games, right, various titles. So that pretty much like scratches the surface of how I started into where we are.
That was an amazing summary up until you said 2003. So
Yeah,
there's still a lot more to go.
That's true.
Yeah, but it's so coincidental, or coincidental, but yeah, just funny you talking about Gur, because I'd obviously never met him earlier on. I wasn't into Brood War. I got into Brood War after I got into StarCraft 2. So
yeah.
But anyways, I really sunk my teeth into Brood War, so I was basically like a Brood War like player fangirl very quickly.
Yeah.
2011, 2012. Anyways, I did go to Korea back in like 2016 or something like that for the Brood War remastered launch. That's what it was. I was down in Busan on the beach, and it was awesome. But I remember going to the after party, because that time I actually knew some people, so I was like invited, right? And I remember Gur came by. And I don't know if you know, but for the listeners out there, he is no longer a Brood War player, of course, but he is a mega star Korean celebrity.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's like on a like really popular Korean show. So you had not just the players that were the fans of Brood War that were at this after party going up to him. You had like the servers stop and like put down their tray and go up to him.
Yeah.
That was
awesome.
That was one of my first tastes of kind of like the really like seeing everyone come together, I guess, for this one celebrity. And even when it wasn't for his StarCraft thing, I still thought it was like connected. So I still thought it was really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, he seems like a really nice guy who obviously did a lot with the jumpstart that he had by being good at a video game.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So 2003, you're getting into CS, which is obviously going to really help you as CS gets more popular. But 2003 is still a very long time ago. We're still talking about pre-Twitch, pre-live streaming as, an easy thing that kind of anyone could do as long as their computer was good enough. And how were you handling, I guess, that era? Because, I got to imagine you weren't making it a career.
True, true. I was actually making nothing doing that, right? So I think for a lot of the people in within my time back then in 2003 to even like 2013, 14, even maybe even till 2016, it's always been like a passion project, right?
Mm.
And those that are still doing it today probably still has that as a huge passion outside of, you can make a career out of it. So you can now really focus and hone on your craft and continue to perfect that every single time. So I had to balance that with a bit of school, but I wasn't really an academic person. I was one of those that was like, Asian parents. You got to become a doctor. You got to become a pharmacist. You got to be good at math. If it doesn't work out, you're a failure. I don't want to see you pumping gas or like whatever it is. So I sort of had like a clash in terms of like not being able to find my calling in terms of like a career job or at least in an academic standpoint. So I was just working at a grocery store part-time slash full-time, asking my managers to take time off to go to these events. They never really understood it. My parents never really understood it either. Or sometimes calling sick to be like, I gotta go to this event, man. I can't do this. I want to go push the envelope within competitive gaming within professional sports. There was really only my brother that didn't really understood the grass around like online competitive gaming or esports or even just commentary for professional gaming back then. But it's like, look, you look like you're having a great time. Just keep at it and just make sure that you're not wasting your time with that. And I think that's what kept me going the most. But it was until maybe 2011. Right, so I've hopped like multiple titles, of course, because all to rewind a bit, when you were casting video games back then, and yes, I was doing Counter Strike, but I was like trying to do a lot of tactical FPS in a sense. So my main bread and butter, where I was like a quote unquote expert as, or the game or the genre that I like to do the most was tactical FPS. So Counter Strike 1.5 to Counter Strike 1.6, Call of Duty 1, Urban Terror, of course, to a certain extent. And all of those genres, but I also like doing arena FPSs because that's where I come from with Quake 2 and Quake 2 Capture the Flag. But you'll touch pretty much everything. I did Painkiller as well for the CPL World Tour, et cetera, et cetera. So within competitive gaming and casting, I was hopping from game to game, mainly keeping CS as my main game though. And when it came to the professional life, real life stuff, it was grocery store, grocery store, grocery store until you're mixing all of that in 2011. You're realizing that, okay, well, I'm still not making enough money. I'm still not making a career out of broadcasting video games. I need to put food on the table. I need a career job, and then I luckily was able to get placed into a career job that wasn't even related into video games. I was actually working for a tobacco company in 2011 till about 2018.
Hmm.
So I did that, and once I started doing that, casting kind of took like a back seat for a bit. It was more like a hobby kind of thing, or if I was able to find like vacation time, I would be able to like take that time off and do like a weekend event. And now in that era is like CS:GO stuff. So I was able to do
Hmm.
like weekend ESCA lands and stuff like that too for ESCA land 15 and 16. But I had to turn down or maybe not be as active looking for events during that era because full-time job.
Hmm.
You start I was starting to feel like, okay, well, maybe after grinding for so long and I'm still not able to be a top tier caster within my discipline. Maybe I'm not cut out for it, right? But then
Hmm.
other people, you always listen to the community. They're like, Vans, you're actually quite awesome. We love you and blah blah blah. So like, okay, well, I'll still give it a shot, but why am I still not getting picked for events? So sometimes it gets to you. You get the imposter syndrome, and you're like, you know what? I'm just gonna focus on the career job, do casting as a hobby. I want to stick around it because I still love it, and then we'll see where it goes. And then I'm sure we'll touch upon today with Valorant. But
Hmm.
Valorant came out, and now I could finally make this a full time job.
Right. Yeah, which is fantastic.
Hmm.
Nothing but good things said by your peers that I've talked to.
Yeah, I appreciate the peers. They're awesome people.
But that is extraordinarily tough. I mean,
Hmm.
to be blunt, you're probably one of the, in that unique situation, which isn't exactly a amazing positive one, which is that you
Hmm.
were around for a very long time, but your brand didn't really get pushed
Correct.
very far.
Correct.
Um,
Correct.
and some of that is luck, to be honest. There's
Hmm.
plenty of stories on this podcast about people being like, I was at the right place at the right time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But usually you kind of expect that to happen, especially with someone who had that experience, maybe with the first bubble that was esports with
Hmm.
Twitch.
Hmm.
So you said
Hmm.
that you kind of got into that tobacco job. You said
Yeah.
2012 to
Yeah.
to 18.
2011, 2012 was when I started.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you're coming in kind of. It's that's funny timing because that
Yeah.
feels like the time where
That was
StarCraft and
exactly it.
Twitch had just made it really
Exactly.
popular.
And to touch upon that is that was the crazy part too, because okay, so 2011, I'm working for this tobacco company, and if I remember correctly, ESEA LAN was maybe 2012,
Mm,
2013, maybe something like that, right? So this is a Counter Strike Go tournament. The game first came out. ESEA are still doing the traditional like tournament finals being held in like a hotel convention room, and people are still sitting behind PCs and whatnot, right? So I got to meet Anders because Anders was flying in to be able to cast that event. I was casting also with Dust Moret and Corey Dunn, which I don't know if you had a chance to speak with Corey, but he also has a big pedigree in the esports scene from a caster to the behind the scenes. But I remember like this one time between like matches or whatnot, we're all hanging out outside with the players, and this guy's like leaning on the wall. He looks at me, we make eye contact, and then we just wave and comes up to me. He's like, "Yo, Vance, what's up? How's it going, man?" I was like, "Oh, good, man. How's it going?" Blah blah blah. So we chit chat, small talk. And it's like, "Oh, I guess you don't really recognize who I am." I was like, "No, not really." He's like, "Oh shit, it's me. It's Jason Moses O'Toole." I was like, "Oh shit, Moses!" And like Moses back then still had like a lot of hair, right? He had a huge mop when he was playing back then, but of course lost all of that once we got to that time. And it was something, yeah, Vance, like I'm trying to get into casting, blah, blah, blah. So, long story short, for that portion was that, he, after meeting with Moses, I still went back with my job. We did a bit of online casting when we ESEA and whatnot, and Sivo started doing caster calls and we are doing online events. But again, I wasn't taking it as seriously anymore, but just as a hobby.
mm,
While Jason pursued it, joining like Room on Fire with Anders and Semler, and then they just started blowing up within like that year or the next year. And I always go back to that moment. I was like, oh crap, man, what if I actually really gave it another go? Like,
yeah.
and no pun intended, another go at CS:GO and see where I could have gone from there. Because then finally getting more events, getting more reps in, you're getting your name known a little bit more. And yeah, it was he was at the right place, right time. I was at the right place, but I didn't get the right timing, and I couldn't
Mm,
read between the lines or predict what was going to happen with that year. But I had to go back to be like, I have job security, so I'll go back to the tobacco company, and no
mhm.
regrets. Everything happens for a reason. So I find that taking a step back from casting, but also being in front of a camera or being in front of an audience or casting for an audience for quite a long time allowed me to be a lot more comfortable around people and not have a fear of like hierarchy within, uh, you know, um, a regular 9 to 5 job. So, like speaking to presidents, speaking to managers, speaking to lawyers, not an issue whatsoever if I wanted to get some ideas out. And all of that in terms of like how to work within a company or whatnot was also some skills I was able to take from that and apply it into like, okay, well, I understand why now, some payments are late, or like how you organize stuff, how much things cost and whatnot, and understand that business aspect a little bit of like
Mhm.
how you're trying to build it within esports. So
Yeah.
all good stuff.
I mean, it's kind of a story that you hear from like people who go into university at a later stage in life or who re-enter into university. So many of them talk about similar missed opportunities or possible regrets, but then they kind of look back on it and they're like, well, I'm so much better, like kind of as a person
Yeah,
right now.
yeah, yeah.
So they do a lot better than their first attempt at university, or they're just they're happy. They're kind of they've learned life skills. And now it's just about getting maybe like a piece of paper or,
That's it. That's
education
it.
in a different field, which you don't hear about super often when it comes to esports because it's usually not old enough to have those situations. But you kind of had it, when you come in
Yeah.
and people seem to really respect you and enjoy your commentary and all that. But you also seem like a very level-headed guy, and it probably has really helped a lot of your relations with a lot of the people that don't get the light shown on them, such as production or
Yeah,
managers.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I think
It's
there's wisdom in what you did. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's always important, I think, in the end, like no matter how many years you grind or like how much you're doing or like what you're currently doing, if it's your first year or second year or whatnot, I think it's always very important to stay very humble in the process, right? Like any opportunity that's given to you, you know, take advantage of that and make the best out of it, you know. And that's
Hmm.
why even for me, when I was casting like online for TSN back in 2002, it was only like Urban Terror wasn't as big as Counter Strike, right? Counter Strike, they were pulling the big numbers, man, 180 listeners, and I was pulling like 4 or 5 in my Urban Terror stream, you know. And for me, like 1 to 5 or to 100 was super important for me, because that means that there's still some people that want to still listen to you and that still want to support you, and you want to make sure that you cater to your audience, and that you make this an enjoyable experience for those that are watching it as well, or sorry, listening it back then. Which is why, like, even now when I'm casting a match, even if it's just an online matchup, an open qualifier, or there's possibility of like a 13-0 blowout or a 16-0 blowout if it's in Valorant or CSGO respectively, I still want to give it my best, so that that part of the broadcast, it's going to live on, right? It's going to be
Hmm.
on YouTube somewhere. It's going to be archived somewhere, and you want to make sure that if people want to re-listen to it a couple of years down the road, then it's not going to be like, a bad cast. It's going to be something that could still be memorable, enjoyable, and be like, oh shit, I remember that play. I tuned into that live, and now I could actually reimagine, repicture it at the same time. So I always keep that in the back of mind. So yeah, stay humble in the process. Stay very professional when you're able to meet the people around you. And of course, it's not a good idea to trash talk everybody if it doesn't go your way. You know, it's getting difficult these days somehow. I'm not going to blame like the generations coming up, but I'm just saying how um, it's not, and everything's not going to be always given on a silver platter, and everything's not always going to be going to how you expect it to go.
Hmm.
And if it doesn't, just take the punch, take the punch, take the learning experience out of that, and make the best, the next experience a lot better. And through that professionalism and better networking, it allows for you to, have those opportunities later on down the road, because esports, as vast as it is in all the facets and games that currently exists, the ecosystem in itself of the people that are casting, the people that are working in events, the producers, talent managers, that still stays very small. Everybody pretty much knows each other as well. So that networking aspect and the friendship, camaraderie, respectfulness is really, really important.
Hmm. Absolutely agree. I think sometimes, obviously there's like egos and the idea of
Hmm.
social media being more popular,
Of
but
course, of course.
there's also a little bit of that crunch for some people. If there really are only so many gigs in a
Hmm.
particular
Hmm.
esport, or they're apparently being pushed out by the one organizer of many gigs, that could
Hmm.
be very tempting to kind of go into bad, you know, bad
Yeah, yeah.
tweets, bad
Of course,
bad
of course.
outlook, bad whatever. But the kind of I think the rule there is that, is this really going to help me in the future at all? And the
Hmm.
answer is
Hmm.
basically no. So either you take the punch and you look kind of decent for it, you look
Yep. Yep.
professional for it, or you don't, and you just you further entrench yourself into someone who's a position where
Yeah.
you're not going to get hired.
Isn't the saying like something along the lines of like, if you really want to try to say something, try to like twist your tongue 7 times to see if it's like worth saying or not. So like crack your knuckles 7 times or something like that. Just make sure so that
Huh.
those Twitter fingers don't start coming out the wrong way,
I've
So
not heard that one. I mean, I've heard like the email, like save the email as a draft for or something like
that's
that.
true. That's true. But you only got
Yeah.
15 seconds sometimes, you know.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
that's a good one. Try and
yeah.
find a habit before you send off that bad letter. But so focusing on like the CS:GO kind of
Hmm.
era of your life, I do have a question.
Sure.
Did Go's initial badness, I guess? I didn't play. I
Hmm.
this is outside sources, but I've heard from enough people that it was just initially bad. That it was
So
hated. Did it
I,
affect your
I I
decision?
yeah, I was never really in a position to say that the game was bad on its release, because I was one of those people that, I was, when CS 1.6 was around and CS Source started coming out, and you kind of had like a divide between 1.6 and Source. I was like, there's no way I'm ever going to play Source. There's no way I'm ever going to cast Source. But then when CS:GO came out, for me, kind of felt like a little bit of a transition from 1.6 already.
Mm,
Um, in the least way from my experience of playing the game was fairly similar in a sense. Definitely not the same as Source. So maybe if you came from Source and you went into CS:GO, then it wasn't going to be that great. I don't and also I've went through like the beta days of CS where you could actually just like do a jump deagle headshot or whatnot, and I guess you could kind of do that in Source as well. But I think that CS:GO, yeah, it still has its kinks. I mean, it was still on beta when it was released, and you had to go through a couple of rough patches. I just feel that it was the same thing as going into Valorant too. But I still found that the community was still very interested and intrigued to see something new in CS:GO when we were promised for I don't know how many years that CS Pro mod was going to come out for Source, and that was going to be like the savior of Counter Strike in terms of competition.
Hmm.
But yeah, I never actually saw it from like a pro standpoint to be like, yeah, this game is awful here and there. I mean, there's been some rough patches around the road from like different guns that were a little bit too OP here and there, but it's as they get patched and you still want to stick around the game, you start seeing that it smooths out a lot more, and you're starting to now really focus on the good players and what sets them apart the others as well, and really enjoyed that as an esport.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. I never
Yeah.
quite understood like what exactly the severe badness was. So, uh, but also keeping kind of around that era. You
Mhm.
said that you moved on for a little bit at around 2011, 2012. Do you ever get tempted to move into other esport that seemed to be gaining more traction? I mean, which honestly primarily would have been StarCraft, Brood War in Korea
Mhm, mhm,
or the
mhm.
incoming StarCraft 2. Certainly by then you guys had seen and heard
Yeah,
about it.
yeah, for sure. I heard about StarCraft 2 and saw like the show match for StarCraft 2 around like the MLG days, because I think that was around 2010, 2011. I was the host for the MLG Warcraft 3 versus 3 arena, and I didn't know shit about PvP, by the way. I was just a PvE player, but Sir Scoots with Godfrey TV and Jason Alchemist, they were working around that. So they're like, you know what, we know Vansilli, let's just bring him in as a host. Like he could at least like run a desk. But when it came down to like trying to learn the game, I was like, holy crap, man, or trying to pay attention to what's going on in a 3v3 game, that shit threw me off. I had no clue what the hell was going on, and I felt like a lost puppy for sure. But then during those times, I like the show matches for StarCraft came out, and that's where I think DJ Wheat was talking about. Hey, he did a show match, and I think that was with GP even back then. So he was casting that with GP, and then eventually started doing that with Day Nine, and I loved watching it. Like I've always loved watching StarCraft as well. I wasn't like a person that was really following the scene deeply, but when I got a taste of esports in Korea back in 2003, when DG Wheat was also telling me that he can own Slayer's Boxer in a 1 versus 1, and then I was like, okay, let me see what this is all about. And then I actually love watching the game, but there was no way that I was going to be
Mm,
able to commentate that game. It looked very, very difficult and intricate, just because I had the opportunity of standing behind players like practicing for StarCraft or even in Warcraft 3 back then with Moon, for example, in World Esports Games in 2005, I think. And man, they move those fingers like artists, like pianists. And I was like, if that it's that difficult to play, I think it's going to be even harder for me to like catch up to the game, really understand it,
mm,
and then get into casting, because that's the thing for me too. For me to want to cast a game, I I I I need to have one interest in it, which I yes had interest into StarCraft 2, but I also wanted to make sure that whatever game that I pick up and that I try to become a good caster in is exactly that, that I can become good enough so that I give the game its respect. Where
mm,
it's due, so that for the community, I'm not bullshitting into like calling random stuff, but just because the voice sounds maybe good for a newcomer, I think for those that are actually good fans of the game, I'm doing it a disservice, and I didn't want to do that. So I didn't want to do StarCraft. I was thinking of maybe trying to get into CS:GO a little bit more, because I was like, I still had my name from casting Counter Strike 1.6, but I felt that if I grinded a little bit more, maybe I could do that as well. Um, even in the later years, Overwatch, when it came out as a tier 1 title, it didn't appeal to me.
mm.
League of Legends did not appeal to me either because I was still very into tactical FPSs before getting into MOBAs. And there's a lot to learn within that as well. And I don't think if you give me 3 weeks to get ready for an event, I'd be ready. I
Mm.
want to make sure that I'm at least like 95% comfortable with like the basics of the game, how the game is run, understand the meta, et cetera, and then get into like, okay, well, does my personality, does the way that I cast, does that fit into the current way that the game is being played, and can I make the fans have a great experience when they're actually going to be watching and tuning into these matches that Vansilli is like, okay, a good up and comer for this game.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not I'm not trying to like put you in a corner, be like, why didn't you cast
Mhm.
StarCraft? I do StarCraft and I love it. But you're in
It's
that
fun.
I think
StarCraft
so.
commentators are amazing. It's fun to watch as a game too. But me, I probably can't do it because I'm not good enough.
Well, yeah, you're just again in that unique situation where you definitely you had the connections, you had
Hmm,
some,
hmm.
you definitely had some experience in it, and you were kind of there for the big boom.
Hmm.
But you amongst I'm sure many others who are still very much tack shooter casters kind of were like, no, I'm
Yeah.
going to stick with this, which it's it's great.
Yeah.
Many of them are now in Rio doing humongous tournaments.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
but now I think we can kind of skip forward and to you said 2018. So to my understanding, Valorant came out in
Hmm.
2020,
Correct.
right?
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what happened up until that point?
Yeah, so 2018, CS:GO was still around. I was still living in Toronto. So during that era of 2011 to 2018, I was still doing some CS:GO events here and there. I was able to do maybe a little bit more like national stuff with Northern Arena, doing CS:GO events for them because it was a dude that I met. The guy that ran this, I'd met him in my condo building. He was wearing like a Call of Duty Ghost T-shirt, and I was like, "Oh, bro, you're a video gamer?" He's like, "Yeah, bro." I was like, "Yo, check this out." So I just got like a Cooler Master just sent me like a keyboard and mouse and stuff like that too. I was like, "Yo, check this out." He's like, "Oh man, what do you do?" I was like, "Oh, I broadcast video games." He's like, "No way, I'm trying to run these tournaments." So random encounter, and it became Northern Arena. So I casted that for a bit, and then 2018, 2019, or maybe 2017, 2018, I was doing some hosting for the Rainbow Six Canadian Nationals, right? Because again, that was also through because Ubisoft is Montreal based. They were doing some stuff in a Toronto studio through Northern Arena, and because I had contacts with that guy, Carl from Northern Arena, he wanted me to host that. Even again, another game that I knew almost nothing of, right, in terms of like how the meta's played, how the operators are getting picked, what's the meta. But I could sort of run a desk because it's a technical FPS, and I had great casters that I was working with, like Intero, Parker, Jesse Chick. So I had an opportunity to just leverage their expertise, and me being like just a dumb guy, not understanding the game, and trying to bring that flair in for like a person that's trying to learn a game, not too newbie, but still try to build some good storylines for the people competing within the scene, that they're going to be like, okay, well, he's doing an okay job. Give him a little bit of time, and he'll be fine, right? So that was that. And then 2018, and I moved back to Montreal, and then I changed jobs. So I went over from working at a tobacco company over to a vaping company. So I went from Philip Morris to Juul, and then within that time, I think that was a little bit more quiet in my esports days. So 2018, 2019 till about 2020, I was just working full time as a sales rep for Juul in the Greater Montreal area. And then, of course, they had to downsize their company due to like a lot of restrictions around the launch of the product, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to get into that. But then I unfortunately got let go in 2020 because of that. They wanted to restructure a little bit in terms of like, hey, we need to win the trust of the people, more than just trying to expand the product worldwide and just like market it the wrong way, I guess, in that sense. Um, so I got a good severance package, right? Trying to figure out what I want to do. Do I want to go back into another, sales rep job or something like that too? Because I've been doing it for like 8, 9 years now. I have that experience. But then my wife was like, "Hey, man, you yeah, she talks to me like, hey man, she goes, yeah, like you love broadcasting video games, and you got a good severance package, and you have time now to really try to focus on that, using that money as like a bit of a cushion to try to get back into it and see where it goes from there. So I was like, are you sure? Because I don't know where this is going to take us within the next few years, and it might give us a setback in terms of like what we're trying to do as a plan, as a family, settling down, whatever. She's like, yeah, it's not a problem. Give it a year, give it 2 years, see where it goes, and we'll go from there. I was like, all right, hell yeah. I won't take no. I want to ask you twice rather. And then I decided to get back into it. My brother also gave me some good support to kick my ass to get back into it as well. So I bought a new PC, new setup, the mic that we have right now, that we currently see right now, that Shure mic. I got a broadcast mic. And then Valorant came out in the beta days, right? And I didn't get access to it, right? I didn't have a network to be able to get a key for that. So I actually had like 14 streams open, like Shroud stream, Summit stream, like anybody that had drops for Valorant and playing it. I was like, I want in this, like this looks pretty cool. And what attracted me to Valorant was because at its core, it's still a tactical FPS, and two, because Salgaroso, one of the two with FMPone or FMP1, that created D Cash, right, in CSGO, also is a map creator within Valorant. So I was like, okay, well, I know Volcano. He was also a pro gamer 1.6, by the way, in for Team 3D. So I was okay. Well, Volcano's a prominent name in the Counter Strike scene. One of my good buddies as well, Entity, that used to play for RDW in Counter Strike 1.6, also works within Valorant. So I was like, oh, I want to try to like give this a shot because we got some CS people that are working on a game by Riot Games. I'm pretty sure like the maps are going to be somewhat playable, just like it is in CS. And I want to give it a shot. And then got a drop, tried it out, and I fell in love with the game. Uh, from the core of like the tactical FPS, but also like the flair of the abilities that gets added onto that was now a little bit different to what Overwatch was to TF2. Because it wasn't as fast paced, right? There was still like a round. There was still within like a minute and 45 seconds. Your objective is to plant a spike and to detonate it as an attacking team, and then the defending team, of course, has to defend it. So I was like, oh well, the premise around that is very similar to CS or Search and Destroy when I was casting Call of Duty 1. So all of that appealed to me. And then, luckily enough, as I was mentioning before, with the networking, meeting friends, and meeting great people within the scene, I think the first event that I've ever done was, I think it was an N box tournament, and it was just somebody. No, actually, sorry, I think it was a Pittsburgh night tournament. So Garrett or GB James, those guys were also old school 1.6 slash Source Pros, respectively. Actually, no, I think Garrett was also, yeah, Garrett was 1.6 and Source Pro. GB James was also just 1.6 Pro for our time, I guess, in 2003. But they're like, hey, man, we're doing this event. You want to cast for us? And it ended up being like 2003 all over again. I was doing an event for like 18 hours a day or something like that. It was a lot of games, but you know what? I was into it because now I get to see what the game is like being played on like a competitive level. I get to learn the abilities and how to interact within each other from like an agent to an agent. And I was like, oh crap, man, this is so fun to learn. The UI was shit, but like I had like a bunch of like loose leaf papers writing like, okay, this person's playing Sage, Mel is playing Sage, Alexis is playing Raze or something like that, and I'm
Yeah.
every time I'm casting, I was like, okay, and the Sage Mel gets a kill on and I'm like looking through left and right on the pages and whatnot, trying to make something like a good story out of the casting. And then after that, Mbox asked me to do an event. Then Miss Harvey, who's been, I'm sure Miss Harvey, or a lot of people know about Miss Harvey, used to be a great Counter-Strike pro in 1.6, won a lot of events in the 1.6 era in the women's tournaments. And yeah, she asked me to do a couple of events with CLG, and that naturally allowed for me to meet up with other people such as Bach, who was also a caster and slash host in CS:GO. He was working for Nerd Street Gamers. They were starting to do some events for Riot, doing like Ignition series and whatnot. And then I started getting more and more and more events, and all thanks to through networking. and getting all those reps also allowed for me to understand and learn the game at a faster pace.
Mhm.
And we don't have demos, right? We don't have VODs or anything like that too. So anybody that's new that's trying to get into the game has to grind the same way. They have to rewatch these VODs, or they have to try to learn the game, but just by watching the broadcast. So they kind of like learn through me and then try to learn themselves. And it's let's say it's kind of like a shit show try to get to learn the game as fast as you can, right? But
Yeah.
it was a great process overall.
Mhm.
So through that, of course, all the events started happening, and VCT started in 2021, and luckily enough, I've been starting to get picked to do these events as well.
Yeah. It kind of brings us up to the current a little bit. So
Yeah.
yeah, very familiar with the Valorant struggles. It's
You tried to
definitely
get into it too?
a little bit. Yeah, I've done a couple of hosting gigs.
Yeah.
Cast one of the Game Changer qualifiers.
Yep. Yep.
And
Yep.
yeah, I remember like I first got involved with the Galorants, and someone asked during one of the casting sessions, like, "Oh, are you supposed to say the characters or their names?" And they're like, "Oh, well, people usually say their names." And I was like, "How? There's no like, there's just like the top bar.
That's
That's
it.
like the
That's it.
agent pictures."
That's it. So you have to look at
Um,
the profile or the avatar, like, okay, this is a sage. Okay, the
yeah,
sage is this person. This person is
exactly.
good. Yeah,
I was
exactly.
like,
So it
how in the
was a
world does this
lot.
make sense? And then I learned that like overlays are kind of like a weird, like debated issue. It's just
Yep.
not. It's not like StarCraft, right? Or apparently even CS:GO is relatively easy to find ways to cast
Hmm.
repetitively. Like keep on doing. Essentially, that's how
Hmm.
I would want to do it.
Of
Just
course.
do casting all the time.
Hmm.
But it's so difficult with Valorant because, of course, all these new games don't have replay systems for some freaking reason.
That's right.
It's very annoying.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
for sure.
but
Yeah,
yes,
CS:GO had like Go TV, right? So you could just get
yeah.
demos and whatnot, and they'll have the overlay of the 10 players, the names and stuff like that too. So it's and you could like pause, you could look from the POV from each player. That's like a huge dub if you want to
Hmm.
learn like the game, the play style of a certain player, want to build a storyline of that player. You could rewatch the same match 10 times to get 10 different POVs every time too. Valorant, you just have to watch VODs of what's being broadcasted. And if you're not a partner channel, then those VODs only stay for 2 weeks. Hopefully
Yeah.
somebody's cutting those and put them on YouTube somewhere. That's the crazy part for sure to try to get into this game right now.
Yes, yeah, pretty darn difficult,
Yeah.
especially because it's a faster paced game as well. I
Hmm.
think really people look at CS as the ultimate spectator experience.
Hmm. Hmm.
Shoot head,
Hmm.
good. Okay, I'll learn about the tactics later.
Yep.
Um, but then Valorant does add that layer of kind of like, okay, well, these abilities are for the most part understandable on a glance,
Hmm.
but some
Hmm.
of them aren't as much.
Hmm.
So, how did you approach the pacing of the commentaries? You said you did a lot of commentaries that really helped you.
Yeah.
But how did you kind of, as your personality, I'm guessing your casting personality was quite ingrained with 1.6. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
how
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
that transition
Definitely.
go?
So funny enough, I don't know if I really take anything away from when I cast at 1.6 in CS:GO to really try to apply it into Valorant. Like the you talked about ego before, and I think that's something that's very prominent as somebody who's just casting within the esports scene. Everybody has to have some sort of an ego because some people turn that into confidence. Some people turn that into humbleness, and that allows you to like just have a better voice, I guess, within your art of casting. For me, my ego back then was just like, why should I waste time like watching demos? Why should I waste time studying teams and stuff like that too? I'm getting all these events anyways, right? So, and maybe that's why I was not getting picked for these events either, because I was not improving. And there was two people that kept pushing me every month, every time I had a chance to talk to them. And that was Sir Scoots and Alchemist. They're like, Vance, get off your ass and start listening to your own broadcasts. Like, see how you can improve from here and there. And that's where within Valorant in itself, I started re-listening to my casts a lot, right? So, am I saying any names, sorry, any words repetitively? Am I using it at the right moment and stuff like that too? And am I using filler words too much? Am I here, there? Like actually, when after listening to some of my Valorant broadcasts, and I go back to listen to my 1.6 casts, there's just a lot of like this, and they're gonna do this here, and then they're gonna do that here, and then here, there, and then 3v2, and then it's always repetitive. So from then on, it was just like I had to relearn the ropes a lot. Get back on the bicycle, learn how to ride a bike again, and not only that, try to do like a tail whip on top of that off a ramp. because you needed to improve yourself very, very quickly because you had a lot of people that had a lot of talent trying to get into Valorant as well.
Mm.
Um, so at least, yes, thankfully there are some bases that maybe I'll say that I got from 1.62 is I trying to figure out, okay, in the freeze time, what's really important, right? How are they setting up? How's the defensive play setting up? How's the attacking play setting up? And then understanding where the players are setting up around the map because you're not staying in spawn. They're actively moving within the freeze time. You kind of have an idea where the first contact's going to be, and then trying to depict a little bit how the round kind of works within Valorant is sometimes the barrows comes up right away and action happens right away because you're trying to find information around the map and you're trying to gain map control as early as you can, either you're on attack on defense. The thing with Valorant, it seems as though on defense, it's way more aggressive than when I'm watching, for example, Counter-Strike. Um, so then I try to figure out, okay, in the first 10, 15 seconds, what's the first contact? What utility is being used? How are they getting information? Are they using it from just a sheer bodies peeking out off a flash, or is it just using the utility that's available for you to scan for information as another player or team's responsibility and role is to the team? So that is like your first 10, 15 seconds, and then maybe potentially the first or second kill within the round. After that, there should be some sort of downtime where, okay, how do you react to this? Do you continue to push forward? Do you cut noise and try to fall back and gain control somewhere else around the map? So there's a lot of pushing and prodding around that area too. And then you have utility that gets refreshed within like 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and those are your initiators again, the ones that are getting information, right? So you're going back and forth to try to figure out, okay, the next point of attack is going to be in a probably or a big hit into a site or an execute is probably going to be into the next 30, 45 seconds if there isn't immediate action off the first kill. So then, okay, I start to think through the process. Okay, do I have time to actually now set that up for my color commentator, because now I'm doing play by play. I did a lot of switching between play by play and color commentator in Valorant, but now that I'm doing play by play, is okay. I estimate maybe that we have a good 20, 25 seconds until the next point of action happens or whatnot. So I try to lay up my color caster to be like, okay, how can we digest what just happened within those first 5 to 10 seconds within the round? What's coming up next? Set them up for that to talk about that as well. And then pass me the mic so I could actually get into that action. And then once the execution happens, there should be somewhat of another downtime because the rotates coming from the other side of the map to try to retake the map on defense, right? So is it a 5 second that I could just say, hey, let me continue this because the action is going to continue forward? Or do I have time to pass it over to my color commentator so that they can analyze what's about to happen for the retake, et cetera, et cetera? So I'm still trying to figure out like the real pacing around it in terms of a round, but it definitely is at a better spot than when it was, let's say, 2 years ago when the game first came out and you were still trying to treat it like a Counter-Strike broadcast.
Okay.
But yeah, definitely the pacing is like very fast paced. You want to try to catch up to the action or try to be ahead of it by calling like an important piece of utility and then just start not necessarily rap godding through it, but try to bring in the hype until those kills that not all the kills, but the most important ones are the ones where you think like, oh shit, this is actually a good one.
Yeah.
I don't like casters who are just hyping up every single kill that's on the kill feed, especially when they're not shown on camera. And I think that's a lack of experience, I guess, in terms of casting.
Lack of experience, as well as I think some people like literally do it just to be on the highlight reel.
Yeah,
This is
yeah, that too,
this
that too.
makes me sound like a good commentator if you just kind of slice it all together. Um, yeah,
It's true though. It's true.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a lot of people that have been doing it, especially now. If you're looking at those that are currently grinding in like the tier 3 scene, and even those that even tried. I mean, for I'm gonna call out somebody here, but I think that he still did a good job with it. Is Simo? So when the game first came out, what he did a lot was that he took the clips of the Valorant teasers before the game was going to come out into the beta, and he was like casting over that of like what it could look like if a jet gets a 3K, what it looks like when they're getting those frags. And of course, those frags are usually going to be highlight reels, right? So he's able to bring in a hype for that. So I think that kind of worked very well into what he was trying to accomplish. One, to get his name out, and two, to show that he's able to get the hype kills within Valorant. But
Hmm.
then when it comes down to, okay, the game is actually out, then you have to start understanding when should you hype the kills, and when should it just be like a regular conversation of like, hey, it's just an eco round. Who cares if this guy's going to get a 3K against pistols? You have an opportunity now to actually set the set the um set the tonality, set the tone of the matchup within those first few rounds to let the audience know what's really at stake in this matchup or whatnot, and what this matchup looks like for these team A and team B playing against each other.
Yeah, I think that's something that play-by-play commentators they learn pretty much after they learn how to be really excited.
Hmm.
That's usually first, and that gets them a bit of credibility. Because using your voice at the end of the day is still very important.
Yeah,
Being able to
100%.
be clear and excited is something that some people legitimately do lack. So it's
Hmm.
good to show
Hmm.
that off. But you said that you recently moved over into play by play, and I was
Yeah,
gonna kind of ask you at some point. I was like, I really don't know where to place you as color
yeah,
or play by play. It feels like I've heard you do both.
yeah,
So this makes a little more sense.
yeah.
But yeah, for your play by play, was there a challenge when it came to kind of identifying, not the how to say, like, almost color aspect of it, the whole like, when do I push the excitement, when do I pull back on the
Hmm. Hmm.
excitement, but
Hmm.
did you have to work a lot on your voice, on your control, or
Yeah,
is this something you already worked on in 1.6?
definitely did had to work on that because, like, as I mentioned before, I had to rewatch my VODs and be like, oh crap, I'm actually not doing that great of a job after all. After all these years, I was like, I should have listened to my elders. I should have listened to Papa Scoots, and take his advice. But there's definitely one thing that I had to work on, at least from the get go, was because I've been casting 1.6 for so long, and because it was like an AM radio style, right, where you had to like say the score after every round, or try to be very detailed into what's going on too, so that when I'm saying a flash is going to be thrown, where is that flash being thrown? Who's getting who's on the receiving end of that? Where are they currently placed around the map, so that a person who's actually listening to the game could close their eyes and picture that, right? And that was my bread and butter. I was able to do that back then in 1.6 and cast very fast within the action of the rounds being overtaken by the T's against the CTs on like B side Inferno, for example, and going through that rap god style was allowing the listeners to really catch up to all of that action. But within Valorant itself, the executions within a site is already chaotic enough, so that if I actually do want to try to cast the same style as I did in 1.6 for AM radio, to be like not only looking at the kill feed, but what utilities being used, what ults being thrown. I'm now adding more. I feel like I'm smothering the image of the viewer's experience. Like they're not able to really understand what's going on, because now I'm rap godding and calling every single piece of action within the full execute that has a bunch of colors going on around the map on a third person view, that you're just like, holy shit, what the fuck just happened, So I had to reel that back a bit more to be like, okay, let's call out the important pieces. Let's try to figure that out. Instead of going through the kill feeds left and right of just, let's just go and try to summarize that of like, hey, the attackers, great execution now through X play. Now they take the advantage of the site. Retake's now coming in. There's only 2 players left for the defenders. I think that in itself now makes it a lot more digestible, and easier to understand from now not only a viewing experience, but also a listening experience, because you still get enough detail to still understand what's going on. So I guess in a sense, I'm still trying to hone my craft to cater to both the person that's going to be driving and listening to the games, or through their headphones while they're walking around, as much as to the person that's currently watching the game from a spectator standpoint. But I also want to cater to those that are doing watch parties or hanging out with their friends on the couch in person, and then suddenly I got to bring up the hype so that they'll be like, holy shit, what just happened? And they'll look back, because you're looking at each other like having a conversation, then you get to look back at the TV. It's like, what did I miss? What just happened? You want to try to bring that in. So I want to cater to all of that all at once. And I'm trying to work on that a lot more.
Hmm.
I think that with that probably means it's the pacing that I need to work on a lot too. So that was probably the main thing. I think after that, after I'm more comfortable with like, okay, how do I want to like set the pace, set the tone, then I could get into more like, okay, how can I wordsmith things a little bit better so I could have like that, the highlight reel to be like, oh, that was just a little crescendo, like the little sprinkle onto like the 2v2 clutch.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh yeah, he steals this. Well, I don't know, whatever words that Doug is currently using that sounds very poetic right now these days. I was like, yeah, that'll come with time. That'll come with time.
All right, yeah. And have you done any kind of professional coaching or gotten any uh, people that you look up to, I suppose, to give you that direct feedback
Hmm.
on play
Hmm.
by play?
I haven't done any coaching at all. I think what I tried to do was, or what I do a lot is still watch a lot of like the prominent esports, right? So I love watching I love watching Moses Cast. I love and the not the Anders anymore, but the Sponge and Machine. I love listening to Uber X into Overwatch League. I still always love Tastosis, but that's a little bit difficult now these days,
Mm.
unfortunately. But I always enjoyed listening to those guys and try to see how they kind of like bring in the level of excitement through their own style and try to sprinkle a little bit of that into my own and learn from that. And then again, just having self reflections by doing VOD reviews to be like, okay, well, how can I have said this a little bit differently? Can I use this now to make this a little bit more interesting into the next cast? And again, thankfully, I have the opportunity of continuing to do these reps so that I could try that out into the next time and see, hey, did it hit? Did it miss? And whatnot. So I think I haven't really had any inspirations from like regular sportscasts. I'm maybe wearing a Canadians jersey, but I cannot name a single hockey broadcaster besides like an analyst being Don Cherry. And like in terms of commentators, there's nobody that I could name. There for me, it's almost like background noise while I'm watching the full match, right?
Hmm.
And I think that's how it is too for people that are currently watching the games as well. Sometimes the way that I see it is like I don't want to take the forefront of a broadcast either. I could be that filler noise, but hopefully it's going to be good enough that it's not like you don't have to mute the whole thing to be able to watch the game.
Yeah, traditional broadcaster is a very interesting conversation. We don't necessarily have a lot of time to get into, but just the idea that
Hmm.
like what they do is different in terms of what they're trying to appeal to. I know you're mentioning you're trying to get the people who are listening on headphones, but usually not to a point like we would for traditional sports if we heard them cast the constant reminders of what inning it
Hmm.
is and whatnot. But also the focus of what esports has become. The only equivalent I can really think of where commentators aren't more of the shining stars, and that it's not that simple. Obviously, there's a lot of shining stars as far as players,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
still, is like maybe Smash. I feel like
Hmm.
I hear a lot more about players than I do about commentators over there.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And then that could be because like I've had conversations with Smash people about this, and they're like maybe because the players are so like intimate up on stage. Who knows? And then yeah, there's kind of the also I think base understanding of traditional sports that people tend to have
Hmm. Hmm.
compared to trying to explain something that is so not tangible.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
video games, so it's really difficult. I think there's a lot of things you can learn from traditional broadcasters. I do usually advise people to go like if they can learn from them,
Hmm.
get coaching from them. But yeah, if you're, I'm so much more like you, where I'm just like, yeah, I'm pretty sure there's noise in the background. The people like I sometimes see like the nerds of traditional sports, arguing over who's the better commentator. I'm like a bunch of nerds. Uh,
That's it. No, but I think in terms of direct feedback, there's definitely moments where I'll reach out to my peers. I think I'll reach out to like Uber from time to time and
mhm.
be like, hey, do you have a chance to listen to this? Like, let me know what you think, or I'll send this over to a couple of my peers that I respect and ask for their feedback. But mainly, like I think I do the bad thing of checking Reddit here and there to see what's going on. I mean, I've had enough thick skin, sorry, from all of the years that I've casted, and those forums were rough back then as well. But you learn to like just laugh it off at some point to be like, they hate us because they hate us, and then now that I'm looking on these Reddit threads for Valorant, I barely see my name. So if I don't see my name at all, then I'm doing something right, at least
Yeah,
for now, you know?
that's
So that's a good part. I think there's one thing that's that. There's also, a lot of up and coming casters that are reaching out to me, even asking for advice themselves of like, hey, how do you approach this game, et cetera, et cetera. And can you watch my VOD? Let me know what you think. And I think that in itself is a testament that not necessarily that I'm already there. It's just like at least I'm going towards the right direction, and I'm doing things right. And I think that's a good pulse to understand that I'm not at the point where I'm trying to fake it to make it, and I seem to bring value now to a broadcast if I'm getting like these type of messages.
yeah. How often do you watch VODs of yourself then?
Oh man, of myself, I try to maybe watch one or two after every event because I'm usually burnt out after events. For example, I have game changers coming up, but I'm watching VODs till like 4 a.m. To prep for these teams,
Hmm.
just because we don't have replays, right? So you just got to try to catch as much as you can and try to understand and depict a little bit more. So that in itself, we're trying to balance like a good amount of time to reflect and look back at your casts. Um, I can't really say that I've been consistent into being able to watch my broadcasts again every single time. I think where I find the best value out of it is whenever both Riv and I are available, and then we message each other and say, hey, let's rewatch our match and see. Is there a way that we could have passed the mic a little bit better here and there? Was I stepping on your toes too much here and there? Did I put you in a corner when I wanted to set you up for like an analysis or something like that? And then we'll start working on our craft as a duo as well, so that we have that synergy in the later broadcasts.
You said Rivington, the third?
Yep, Rivington. Yeah,
Okay,
Rivington.
yeah.
Yeah,
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 I know it is Valorant, obviously, but I
yeah.
just making sure I heard it correctly. So yeah, that's kind of something I forgot about, that your common casting partner right now is a guy who has a lot of history to his name.
Oh
Like
yeah.
he's a pretty big deal.
Funny enough, Rivington and I casted Counter-Strike 1.6 for TSN back in like
Ah,
2004. Yeah, so then so we did a bit of CS together, and then I don't know where he went. I think a little bit early before League of Legends came out, I joined Radio ITG, and then Riv started doing his stuff with League of Legends. But then of course Valorant came out, and probably that's why we see his name in Valorant, because at the core he's still a person that loves tactical FPS.
yeah.
So he wanted to give Valorant a shot, and now we have the opportunity to work together. So that's the good part, and that's why I also went back into play instead of doing color, is because Riv wanted to try out color for
Mm.
this time this year around. He enjoys it. I enjoy doing play and now for us, at least for the good chunk of 2021, being able to stick together for all of these matches during the VCTs, and finally, like for me, I'm like, okay, well, I don't have to like try to chameleon all the time with different people. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, because it allows for you to adapt with different partners. But I think being able to have that one partner also then allows you to focus on the craft together
Hmm.
as a duo. And when you're comfortable enough to where it's currently at, then it also gives you an opportunity to now focus on yourself, on how you can get better too. Because now, like, sometimes there are some things that could become autopilot at that point, right? I have to think about, hey, when's a good time to pass the mic. You should have passed this to me. Like, we usually cast with our cameras open on Discord, so that we do hand signals to pass the mic and stuff for online broadcasts, right? So that, seeing that we're doing less of those, need to do less of those, then allows for you to be like, okay, I don't have to have like a session with Riv together to review our match. Now I get to review it from my point of view and be like, okay, how could I have said this better? How could I work on this better as well, from a personal standpoint?
Having a permanent partner, I've definitely had conversations with a lot of people about whether that's better or not.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But it's something I've been thinking about recently, due to no particular set of people, but
Mhm.
just in general, it's like, well, what are your thoughts on the kind of the idea of like a partner responsibility, like being branded as a duo when maybe theoretically there could be the idea like, well, if I was paired to someone else, we'd be
Hmm, hmm.
baller, like how many people
For
are
sure.
jealous that Uber is with Mr. X?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Even I still want to bring Uber over to Valorant so I could cast with them.
There
So
you go.
yeah, thankfully, I still message Mitch all the time, be like, "Yo, when are you coming over?" So, him and I are good buddies, and we met through Valorant, so that's the cool part. But to get back onto the question, so here's the thing: there was a lot of stuff that I had to learn getting into Valorant as well, in terms of like the duos, how does that work, and all that too, because I was always under the school of thought that hybrid casting is okay because I come from a game like Counter Strike, right? Because the rounds sometimes could be a little bit longer. You have a freeze time where people can't move literally for 15 seconds, so it gives you an opportunity to like open and set the pace and have an open conversation like two guys on the couch and then talking about the game and then talking about how the round is evolving back and forth until you get into the action. Both things do play by play, and I was always more fond of doing that when Valorant came out. But Valorant, once it came out for me, as I mentioned before, like the first 5-10 seconds, there's action, then there's a small lull, then there could be action again, there's a small lull. So there's like it's cut into sequences that's almost off to the same amount of time as like the refresh time of the initiator abilities when it comes back up, right? So that gives you a better opportunity to have a cookie cutter play by play and caster into the duo. And I think I'm definitely more along the school of thought that set rules for the duos for one thing in Valorant is important. Secondly, in terms of having a permanent duo, now really back to the question. So to have an actual duo permanently, or to have a partner in a permanent duo, I think that's also very important as well, because like I said, I'm like a chameleon, right? The way how I function when I work with somebody new is that we always have a first conversation. I always like to reach out to them and say, "Hey, how do you like to cast? What's your style, and how do you like to approach casting in your point of view from a play-by-play perspective or a colorist perspective, depending whatever the role they want to make?" Because I'm now comfortable doing both in Valorant. So what I want to do is to make sure that if they're comfortable of taking the mic more during the hype moments or whatnot, I'm going to make sure that when I see some action as a color commentator, I'm going to shut the hell up because I know that my co-caster is going to be able to take the reins and control that portion of the broadcast. And then I want to make sure that I elevate them, right? So if I'm able to make them feel as comfortable as possible, I believe that they're going to be able to provide the best commentary to their extent in such a new duo that we currently have together. And then naturally that'll help me look good because the product in itself looks good, right?
Mhm.
So, but I was always like casting with a different partner every single time in like 2020 or whatnot when Valorant first came out. So every single time for me, it's like I'm hitting a reset button because I'm never going to be able to improve myself as a caster because I always have to adapt to the other person. But now that I'm able to have a permanent duo with Rivington, then now I could focus on myself too, and to now the pacing, the tonality, and how I want to hype up the kills or whatnot.
Mhm.
How I want to move around the round myself as a caster, so that eventually the duo sounds even better. So
Mhm.
I think in that sense, it's really, really important. I know there was a debate probably around mid 2020s when Riot started coming out with like region locks. You can't cast with somebody that's across the ocean from you. If you're a North American caster, you can't cast with somebody from EMEA. And also within North America, there was a lot of those moments where they were testing to see if it was worth it, if it was more beneficial to not have permanent duos, but to mix talent around. And I think we all came around now to realize that it actually makes it, at least within Valorant and the way that I see it right now, it makes more sense to stick as a permanent duo and not mix too much into like these big circuits or whatnot that's currently happening within Valorant.
Yeah, I mean, do you ever get like FOMO though? Like you were like
Of like missing
other
out casting with somebody else.
yeah, yeah.
I definitely do. I definitely do. I think like if you're asking me tomorrow, right? Or if you're asking me like at the end of the day, holy crap, Uber is actually signing with Valorant right now. Do you want to cast with him? I'd probably say yes, but at the same time, I'm also very, I'm starting to feel very comfortable with Rivington as well, where our craft is starting to look good together too.
Mm.
But I also know from for me, the best play-by-play caster in the industry, I'm not going to have any issues catching up to Uber as well, so that we sound good as a duo. So there's definitely pros and cons into and into choosing or to stick, sorry, to with a permanent duo. But I think if the opportunity is not now, then we'll see where if there's another opportunity that arises
Mm.
that could allow us for us to work together.
Mhm.
Um, like I said, I think being humble within the experience throughout the whole process is going to help a lot too in terms of like coping with that FOMO feeling that I find
Yeah, yeah.
because I'm still doing VCTs, I still get to cast with a great partner, and I'm still able to entertain the general audience, and they seem to love it. So the grass is always greener at some point, and there's always the positive out of everything rather.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Well, we are past the hour mark, I believe. So
Already?
I know, right?
I could go for another three if you want.
I get the feeling, yeah. No, it's absolutely a delight listening to you talk about this. But we do have to, wrap it up with one last question, and I'm going to ask
Sure.
something that's very, I think, topical for you. How do you prepare? I know you're currently preparing for game
Yes, yes,
changes.
yes.
So what is the process? You get a gig for Valorant, a game that you're very close to, but still,
Yep.
what's your to-do list look like?
Okay, so now as we're recording this right now, I'm currently prepping for the Valorant Game Changers Grand Finals in Berlin, which I fly out to tomorrow. And what I've been doing for the past week was literally watching VODs of all the teams that are participating. I'm currently, even at this point, within the week and a half, I'm only at 5 teams out of 8. Or sorry, 4 teams out of 8. Two of them being like Cloud9 White and Shopify Rebellion. So I kind of like, it's just going to be fast VOD reviews, but I've been focusing a lot on learning Team Liquid, looking at X10. And what I've been doing within that prep is um, look at not only the grand finals, but multiple maps that they currently play. So let's say they play Icebox. I want to watch 2 or 3 games of their Iceboxes against different teams. Have they changed their playstyles or the setups the same? So what I'm currently doing, how I prep for that is watching VODs to understand tendencies of how they currently set up. Right, whether it's on attack or defense, because that in itself allows me then as a commentator to kind of call the next thing. When we were giving a lot of praise to, for example, if you're currently listening to this on Spotify or whatnot, and you're following Valorant, and you remember 2020 where people were praising Sean Garris a lot of being able to call the next point or call the next point of action that's going to happen because of this simple utility that just popped up. That's a type of broadcast that I want to bring as a play-by-play or even as a color commentator if I have to do that. But as a play-by-play, this allows me to even set up my color commentator as well, because now I know, oh, they're doing this setup right now. G2 once again is playing a cipher with no Sage and putting 2 traps on the A site. They're going to be really weak on Fracture on B site right now because of this, and I keep that in mind, right, when I'm casting the game, so that when I see that pattern happen, or if I see that pattern happen, we could start having that conversation with each other as co-commentators whenever there's a timeout or whatnot. So that is the biggest portion of prep for me in terms of getting ready for an event. After I'm done doing all that, I'm probably going to rewatch, for example, Champions from a flows perspective. So top a show to map select, agent select, toss to casters. Casters finish the match. How does that look like? How much time do they have talking with each other while the B roll is going over the footage of the team winning or whatnot? What are they talking about? How do they set that up? How do they throw the break? How does it come back? When does it go to the interviewer? When is there a telestrator portion? I know there's always a run of show that's going to be able to help you with that, but I think trying to absorb that as well from a broadcast perspective allows me to be more comfortable again into the chameleon role to be like, hey Vans, we kind of need you to do the interview for this winners match, and then now I know, okay, when is it going to pass to me? What questions are they usually asking? Can I ask hard hitting questions? Is it more laid back? What type of selling point are we also trying to do as a product, right, for the stream? Because I don't know if you watch Champions, but it was definitely more entertaining and memey than it is analytical from time to time in these segments, right? Because you're trying to be an entertaining product in the end within Valorant. So I try to learn that as well. And then I'll probably watch the grand finals too, just to be like, oh, what was that winning moment like, and how did the casters do it? I'm probably not going to be casting grand finals, but just in case, you never know what's going to happen. So yeah, I think that's another big one. And then lastly, if there is a lastly, maybe I'll think of other things while I'm talking through. But I do a lot of like of compositional research, sorry, on VLR. So for example, or on other Valorant websites, such as Spike or whatnot, or rib.gg, when I want to know, okay, they've played this composition for X amount of times, X amount of matches, these are the results, and blah blah blah. And then after watching a couple of these VODs, then you understand that nothing's really changed in that, right? But if there's going to be, coming up to match time, there's an agent change within live, right? It's like, oh crap, this is something new. Then it all comes back to me. I was like, okay, why are they choosing this agent? What's the winning condition into that as well? So that you keep that in mind when you're getting into the broadcast, to be like, okay, this could be a pivotal point now that G2 is going back to Sage on Fracture, because now they could actually slow attacks a lot better than they did when they had a KO, for example. And we've seen that example when they played against Gildex, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So like all that type of knowledge from game tendencies is what I usually like to look at. And as I told you, I'm a university dropout, right? So I'm not good with numbers. I'm not the real Vietnamese Asian, proud kid that the Asian parents want. So when it comes down to stats, I'm not too good at like digesting that. But thankfully enough, we have people that work in the background within Riot that are running through these stats, and I have a lot of conversation with them to try to understand what these stats mean, so that I can bring that into my storyline as well. So yeah, there's a lot of like A, B, C's, and D's that we're trying to mold together into a Venn diagram and pick that middle piece, and hopefully make the best product out of it. So now that I think about it, that's probably the biggest ones. How can I, if I put myself now in the shoes of the casters within everything that I've watched and understood, and watched the previous events, am I going to be able to do it? I just want to make sure that I prepare enough so that I'm confident through any hiccups that may happen, or the smoothest event, I'll be
Yeah.
ready for it.
Sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah,
Because I know how
yeah. I
difficult
think,
and long
yeah. I
those
was
VODs are.
I was just in. It's funny enough. I was just in Mitch's workout stream, and he was like, "Vance, you over prepare. Like you're doing too much." I was like, you know what? Maybe it's just the Asian in me.
I was gonna, if we had a lot more time, I was gonna ask you this
Yeah.
thing is over preparing, because certainly I absolutely understand where you're coming from, and I
Hmm.
definitely do I believe my due diligence when it comes to preparing, but I
Hmm.
also realized at some point, especially when I got into hosting, I need that I don't know, that absence, that
Yeah,
gap or
yeah, yeah.
something. I need to
Hmm.
kind of free flow it, um or it's not going to be helpful. And I
Hmm.
know I have a co-caster who has definitely been accused of over preparing before, because he'd study for the round of 126.
That's amazing. That's actually
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Now you're
There,
listening, Fear Dragon.
I feel that there definitely is definitely over preparing that could happen too. But
Hmm.
but for me, it's like everything that I over prepare for, I'm not looking to regurgitate all of that into a broadcast, right? I think that's the most important thing as
Hmm.
well. I think it's good. It's good for your own knowledge, so that if there's actually anything that's like, oh, this would probably be missed in a regular broadcast or whatnot, but because I know it, I could maybe say it and be like, holy shit, this guy actually knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
um but I think the main thing, eh, I don't spend time playing Valorant ranked all the time either to be really good at a game, to understand like the real mechanics around every single agent. Um, because I watch the VODs to be able to understand from a pro level, or try to understand at a pro level, what that play is for, when they're going to try to make that play. Mechanically, I don't need to know when to jiggle peak, but like in terms of understanding why they're doing it by watching the VODs and what's the outcome of them doing it, I think that's the important part of the preparation.
Yeah. I mean, prepare if it makes you feel confident. And
Yeah.
if you get that moment where you're like, "Oh my god, I know the thing that no one else knows," it really can even be a standout of your
Hmm.
career.
Hmm.
But I think what you said is really important to remember for those who are prepared to be the best because they are the guys in school who are like, gel pens and highlighters. And they're like, it'll be great. The really important thing is that you're supposed to take that information and scale it down. That's a lot what a
Yeah,
commentator does.
exactly, exactly.
So yeah, have information if you want, but yeah, it's got to be useful, I guess
Yeah,
is
don't
the
regurgitate it.
thing.
That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. But that has got to do it for the podcast this time around. Thank you so much again for taking time out of your
Thanks
busy
for having me. Thanks for
schedule.
having me.
So I
It
know
was
you're doing.
fun. Super fun.
Yeah, I'm glad you had fun. You're doing Game Changers, obviously, with by the time
Yeah.
this comes out. But what's the future for Valorant look like? Do you do any streaming, any content creation? Let us know where you're going to be.
Awesome. Yeah, so every time I do VOD reviews, I usually do them live, so you guys can catch them as well on my Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/Vansilli. It's the same alias as well for Twitter, which is twitter.com/Vansilli for tweeting out whenever I'm live, whenever I'm doing events. It's unannounced what event I'm going to be doing in December, but keep a lookout for that. And I also do a weekly show with other great people for a show called Valoranting. That's also being produced and owned by a guest that you had on the show before, Sir Scoots and Alchemist. So we've been doing that every Tuesday, and that's been really fun to do as well. Outside of that, 2023 still unknown, but we're praying to the Valorant gods and to the good vibes that everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, I hope so.
Thank
Obviously,
you.
Valorant's going to be big, and I think
Yeah,
you absolutely deserve to be picked up for the seasons. So
appreciate. Yeah,
yeah.
hopefully you get to grow with it for sure.
Hope so. That's it. So thank you again. Thank you to everyone who's listening or watching. Thank you to Shayne and VladIV for co-producing this podcast and Barrett for helping to organize it, as well as everyone over there on the Patreon, patreon.com/ZombieGrub. Thank you to those who go above and beyond. We got Nick, Vinny, Steven, E.T., Ravi, and CuddleBunny just giving a little bit of that extra support to continue this endeavor, talking to all of these amazing pros in the commentating scene. So yeah, as I said, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you guys back here for episode 65. Bye bye.